We're going to do a very quick segment in Brazil because we have the fortune of a translator having contacted me and has done a very good job gisting what's been going on since the contested election result, in which Jair Bolsonaro, of course, was booted out in favor of Lula, the socialist challenger. And people will remember that Alexandre de Moraes, the Supreme Court head, who also sits in the Electoral Tribunal, is basically judge, jury, and executioner. He's taken on the role of all three branches of government. And in Brazil, they also talk about the military being the fourth pillar, making four branches. And you can see here that generals are quite involved in resisting. Bolsonaro has not called for the army to mount a coup d'etat. He's repeatedly said that he's waiting for orders from the public so that he will not be a tin pot dictator who just seizes power. But here we have a gist by our viewer. Jair Bolsonaro was meeting with General Braga Netto and commanders of all three service branches. In a WhatsApp group, General Netto stated that Brazil is experiencing a serious political impasse, especially with the confirmation of an illegal and fraudulent electoral process imposed by the Supreme Court and the Electoral Tribunal. All of this under this is very strong words for a serving general, autocratic, arrogant, and illegal leadership of Minister Alexandre de Moraes. I repeat, he's a judge. He's not a politician. He's not a legislator. He's not anything else other than a judge. But he's giving orders to police and all kinds of stuff. Let's see more examples of that. We've got here a video which is playing silently in the background as I read what's going on. These are all the people whom de Moraes, through his two courts, has silenced. Sarah Winter is under house arrest. The next gentleman, Alan dos Santos, is now a refugee in the US and hasn't seen his family for 2 years. This news channel, Terça Livre TV, had all its accounts closed, its doors closed, and dismissed 80 staff. Oswaldo Eustáquio, who's now in a wheelchair, having been beaten by police, has been arrested 4 times for 2 years past now. Marcelo Frazão, a professor, was fined the equivalent of £10,000 and lost his channel. Marco Sintra here, fighting a legal action for criticising the vote, and he's been taken off the internet. Wellington Macedo was a journalist who's wearing an ankle collar for criticising the Supreme Court. I'm having to skip some because there's so many. Pastor André Valadão lost all his media profiles for criticising the Supreme Court and the election court. Judge Ludmila is fighting a legal battle for criticising de Moraes and lost all her media accounts. On a news channel here has been had its channels seized. Bob Jeff here is another one who's lost all his rights. This goes on and on. You can see this is a lot of professional people, judges, clergymen, journalists. These comedians have lost their profiles. It's the worst kind of Canadian and European stuff is happening in Brazil. And we actually have a man to blame for it all in this case. De Moraes and his two courts are actually issuing orders to these internet people, and in many cases, real world actions to arrest people. And I repeat, there's been some long-term disquiet in Brazil, so that figures like this Oswaldo Eustáquio, who you saw, who's now wheelchair-bound after being beaten and detained so often, he's been at this for a couple of years. And people who can read Portuguese or make some sense of it can see the bare bones of it. Monarch is one of the most popular podcasts in the country. He was demonetized by YouTube and lost his channel after a Brazilian court order for criticizing electronic voting machines. And there are hundreds of others, says the final text on screen, who've been silenced by de Moraes' two courts, the Supreme Court and the Electoral Tribunal. So this is really going to go places, but not the usual Latin American disorder yet. Just a still that's on screen next, you can see Jair Bolsonaro, the outgoing president, has been saying for a couple of months that he's ready for war, but while he was speaking in the more equatorial Paraná state in the north, where people are a bit more hot-headed, he was quick to say, I will not go to war without you. I will not start commanding the army. But it is a rather desperate situation that's developed. And here is a gist again by our translator of what Bolsonaro has said. That's in green. He says, we not only have the money thieves of the past, but a new class of thief has appeared. They wish to steal our freedom. And he says, we cannot imagine seeing this situation go on for a couple of years, but we're not going to go down the dysfunctional route of other Latin American countries. So we'll see how far this manages to get. The translator makes a note here that the protesters are asking for the restoration of the separation of powers. People can freeze the screen and read all of that. They're being, like their European Portuguese co-Lusophones, they're being very constitutional about their demands, and they know what their rights are. And here's a key point by this translator. Brazilians are sick of the lies in the European press. If you listen to the European press, you'd believe that there were hardly any trees left in Brazil. But there's so many forests as far as the eye can see. So this is being bound up with, the usual grudge that Brazilians are being falsely reported. We can see here in just a few seconds of silent footage that the Conselho Tutelar, the Guardians Council, again operated by judges and judicial orders, turned up on the picket lines in the 18th of November, not many days ago, and tried to take the children away from these protesters. And they were beaten back, as you can see, with a minimum of force, just a bit of shoving rather than anything worse than that. This was on Avenue Fernandes Lima in Maceió in Brazil. And regarding that particular footage, our translator has one final comment, which is that, well, I won't read it all, but basically, Brazil isn't as degenerate as Europe or North America or Australasia yet, in that you cannot, by court order, seize children and basically sell them to others for adoption or agency care for profit. All they can do is give the children from the parents to the grandparents. So some states, as the translator writes, are on Bolsonaro's side. Quite a desperate situation, but we would encourage people in other language areas who share my profession of translator to send me more or less ready-made material, and if we judge it, as I'm sure it will be up to spec, we'll very gladly feature it, as I'm running short of time with all the other things I do for UK Column now, to go fishing for foreign language material myself.
Okay, thank you for that, Alex.